Welcome to episode 59 of the Rogue Bogues basketball series. Took a week off, had my kids in, they had to go to the emergency room. So that's why we were out. I was in hospital with them at 3, 4, 5, 6 in the morning, and then bailed on the wife, went home, had a nap, and did not want to get up and do the podcast, and didn't know if I'd even be home. I didn't think I've even made it for our regular time. So that's why we're off last week. So I apologize for that. But welcome back, bro.
Bogues, man, when you told me that, it sort of gave me some memories back a few months ago. My son, the brain surgeon that he is, we gave him like fish cutlets, right? Like mashed up. And all of a sudden he just keeps like pointing at his throat, right? He could talk and everything, all good. And my wife is she's a vet. So she's got some instruments or whatever. She looks down his throat. He had a fish bone in his throat caught in his tonsil. So we went from like quiet dinner to night in the hospital, and like $3,000 later, we learned the hard way not to have any more fish fucking cutlets. So yeah, that's why I was like, yeah, take care of your stuff, man. I'm glad everything's good though.
Yeah, all good, man. I had the adenovirus, which we've all got now, and I will tell you this, pro. 10 times worse than COVID for kids, in my opinion. Our kids had COVID about 3 months ago, and it gave my one had a fever for literally 24 hours and a headache, and that was it. Was swimming in the pool the next day, running around like they do. This adenovirus floored him, man. Floored him, like on antibiotics, eye infection from it, ear infection, coughing, or as soon as they lie down to sleep, it's just coughing. So I will say the adenovirus, that one to me, in my opinion, has been infinitely worse than COVID for the kids. So that's been an interesting note. But enough with the Dr. Bogues and Dr. Pro. I'm sure people will love that. A lot to get through, man, because we missed last week. So bear with us. We've got a lot of news to get through, but we will start. I will say this. People have been stopping me. I've been stopped now 3 or 4 times with people listening to our podcast. One guy at the gym actually had it on while he was working out and stopped me, and he's like, Are you Andrew Bogut? I'm like, yeah. He's like, oh, I'm just listening to your podcast right now. So we appreciate all the support. That's really, really cool to see. Filling up my car at a petrol station as well. Another guy comes up to me, goes, listening to your podcast in the car. So we appreciate all that support. That's really cool to hear, and kind of surreal to think there's people out there, I'm doing my everyday chores and things, and just coming up and saying hello. So that's always cool, pro.
No doubt. And our listeners are great. Like, the messages we get, all the shit talking, DMs, and, that's been probably the most fun thing besides like paying attention a little bit more and talking hoop, but like having people that like to talk shit, like basketball, like the fact that we don't do it like everybody else. And, we don't talk the same old bullshit. So it's been pretty fun, man. It's good.
Yeah. And keep sending in those useful, useless stats and fact or fake news. We've got one from a listener that's going to be on later. So we see most of those, they get flicked through to us. So we appreciate all that. But let's go. Team of the week for me, pro. I think last week it would have been Boston for me, but now that it's a 2-week hiatus, they're honorable mention. My honorable mentions, Phoenix, New Orleans are in there, I think. I think they're playing really well right now. Toronto and Atlanta. But I've got to go with the Memphis Grizzlies. They are 9-1 in their last 10, 7 straight. Get this, pro. 20-2 without Ja Morant.
That's
20-2 this season. That is insane. He's an all NBA level player. There's not many teams in the league that lose an all NBA type player. Maybe bar the Denver Nuggets that can, maybe the Clippers that can compete at this level. But Memphis locked up the 2 seed. They have a chance for potentially. I know they don't have a chance for the first, but they're going to hold on to the 2 seed. I mean, my question for you, pro, are they for real? I mean, they're very well balanced. That's the one thing that sticks out for me, that they've got a young, tenacious group. They're very well balanced. Their confidence is on 10. Dylan Brooks on Andre Iguodala. Quote, we had all the vision and he didn't. Send him back to the Warriors and let him do his thing there, obviously referring to Andre Iguodala holding out, a year or so ago. Didn't want to go to the Memphis Grizzlies when he was traded there. So they're getting a bit of confidence about him. My question is, are they for real? Are they still a year away? They still need to take their lumps in the playoffs because they haven't showed us that in the playoffs. They are getting a little bit confident, but they are playing well, pro. Give me your thoughts on Memphis.
Folks, you know what? Like, it is, you're right. Like, you look at them, they haven't had a lot of success in the playoffs yet, but who cares for now? Like, it's they're running through teams. They're playing well. They're playing together. They got look, they've always had it, back from the Zach Randolph, and Tony Allen days. They've always had that sort of like, beat the shit out of you mentality, and we don't really care who you are. We're going to run through you. Jenkins, their coach, like, give him the coach of the year already. Like, he's done a fantastic job. They're sort of like a mini Miami in the sense that, like, they're getting this culture, they're getting this stigma of being tough, next man up mentality. Obviously, without Ja, you've got all these guys stepping up: Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson, Dylan Brooks. You got Kyle Anderson started the night, he played really well. Like, Steven Adams, one of my favorite centers. Like, Brandon Clark plays well at times. Like, it's just they just keep playing, and they just keep coming, and they keep coming, and they keep coming. I think they are for real. I think that if you sleep on them in a series, if Phoenix sleeps on them or someone like that, if they get there and they're healthy, knock on wood, I think that they can go very far. They could even challenge for the West. I wouldn't go that so far, but I think they are for real. I think they can go deep in the playoffs. I like this group. I like their coaching staff, and I think they'll do really well.
Yeah, you look at their scoring right now. Ja Morant, obviously 27.6, Desmond Bane, 18.2, Dylan Brooks, 18.5, Jaren Jackson Jr., 16.3, D'Anthony Melton's at 10.8, Brandon Clark's at 10.3, and then they've got a bunch of guys that are 8, 7, 7, 7, 7. Really well-balanced team, like really well-balanced. And we see that. That's, Ja Morant's out, and they're balling just as well without him. But I still do believe there's people out there that say, well, they're better. Maybe they're better without Ja Morant. You need a Ja Morant in the playoffs because things are going to bog down. You need a guy that can get a bucket single-handedly. I had this conversation with a friend of mine, and he was kind of saying, "Oh, do you think they're better without him? They're balling without him." I said, "You need a guy like that in the playoffs." And who was the last team, in your opinion, that won an NBA championship that didn't have a standout All-NBA kind of Hall of Fame type guy? Who was the last team for you?
Bogues. And I'm probably wrong on this, but I would say the Detroit Pistons when...
Bang. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
100%. I said the exact same thing, and that's what 15, 20 years ago now?
Yeah.
15. Yeah. Yes. Right? Some people might say the Spurs, but Tim Duncan's All-NBA. Yeah. But you look at that Pistons team, there's not one guy on that roster that you're like, that's the best player. They had 4 or 5 guys that were like, oh, they're kind of even. Tayshaun brings something that Rasheed doesn't, that Ben Wallace doesn't, Chauncey, rip running off screens. They were the last team. So it doesn't happen very often. You'd like to see it more, but you need that All-NBA, hey, our offense is shitty, we can't move the ball, throw it to Steph Curry, throw it to Kyrie Irving, throw it to LeBron James, get us a damn bucket. And Memphis needs that in Ja Morant, so that'll be my rant there. But who do you have?
I have the Toronto Raptors, Bogues. It's a tough one because there's a bunch of teams playing well, but Toronto, in my opinion, like the job Nick Nurse and those guys have done up there is tremendous, man. They're running through teams. They beat Boston at home by 3, even though Boston didn't have a lot of their crew. They beat Minnesota, who's been playing really, really well. I think they beat them by over 20 points. At home, and they've been playing. They've been playing very, very well. I think those guys, they're charging. They're playing, especially at home. They're really tough to beat. Scotty Barnes and Siakam, and Gary Trent Jr. and Fred VanVleet. Like they've, OG Anunoby. Nice pronunciation there. But like those guys have been playing really, really well. They're hard. On the road, maybe a little bit different team, but I'll tell you what, they're like. You know how Miami, like everybody goes there and they got a chance against anybody. When you go up to Toronto, you got to go through fucking, you got to go through customs that night and all that shit. It's got to be something, man, because they play really well at home, in my opinion.
Well, it's a pain in the ass of a city to get to, man. It is in the NBA circuit because you got to go through. But what I mean by that is every NBA city you land, the bus is on a tarmac. You get on your bus, you go to the hotel. It saves you about an hour and a half of going through the bullshit. In Toronto, you got to get off, wait on a bus. They come on the plane, check your passport, get off. Then you got to take your luggage through like a terminal. Then they check your passport again, then go through, then wait on the bus, and it takes an extra hour or two. So if you're landing at 1 a.m., that's 4 a.m. arrival at the hotel, right? And it is a pain in the ass. But yeah, Toronto's balling, man. They're very well balanced too, like the Memphis Grizzlies. Van Vliet, Siakam's their leader points-wise, 22.3. Van Vliet at 20.3. Anunoby, I think that second end silent pro, OG Anunoby, 17.3. Gary Trent Jr. at 18. Scotty Barnes, potential rookie of the year, 15.4, and then they've got a bunch of guys that are 9 points, 6 points. So they're doing really well. 8-2 in their last 10. They've won, what have they won? 5 straight. They're 6th in the East. I don't think they can't get to 4. They can jump. They're tied with the Bulls for 5th. So that doesn't really matter. I think that's matchup dependent on who they think. That right now they'd play the Celtics. If they move up to 5, they get the 76ers. Depends what they want there, I think. But they can't really get home court, I don't think, unless something drastic happens, like the 76ers just absolutely implode, which could happen. They're not playing that well. But yeah, looking good for the Toronto Raptors. I like the direction. I didn't have them doing as well, and they're definitely surprised. Nick Nurse has definitely done a great job. So that's a good one. Team of the week, poor team. Pretty simple, Pro. My honourable mentions here, the Lakers, but we could give them that award every week. The Warriors.
Folks, Lakers aren't eligible anymore. They're out of the top 10. They're not eligible.
Yes, by one game. By one game. But I had to mention them. The Warriors, obviously, with Steph out, they've taken their lumps. But the Utah Jazz, you mentioned that you think they're point shaving, Pro.
Jesus Christ! Yeah, I mean, look, Bogdanovich is out, no doubt about it. That's tough. Like, they traded away Ingles. He got, with the injury and things. But without that, you still have your 2 best players, and you have a bunch of your rotation. Like, you can't just go to, who was it they got shelled by? Was it Boston? They lost by
Boston,
30 to somebody.
And then they were up, they were beating the Clippers by 20 and then lost that game somehow. I looked at the score in the third. I'm like, that one's over. Looked back and I'm like, how did they lose?
Oh, God. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, 4-6 in their last 10. And lost 5 straight. Probably would have been 6 straight if it was anyone but the Lakers. So they beat the Lakers a couple of nights ago to break that streak. It just doesn't look good. It just... I don't know. Is it Joe Ingles? I mean,
yeah. To me, it is. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's a factor. It's he's not a superstar player that's going to go out there and change the game completely. But I think as far as a locker room presence, I think he brought a lot of veteran leadership. I know he's one of those guys. If Rudy's getting ahead of himself or Donovan, Joe would throw out some sarcastic jibe like, "Hey, man, you're getting ahead of yourself, blah, 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 blah," and kind of, settle things down. But, yeah, I think they miss him. They just miss his calmness. They could move him to the point and keep Donovan at that natural 2 scoring guard position. I think when they take Conley out of that lineup and put Mitchell at the 1, it becomes very ISO laden. And I just don't think Mitchell's that distributor or ball movement guy that Conley or an Ingles was. So I think it does hurt him. And then Bogdanovich being in and out of the lineup doesn't help neither. But they don't look great. And then they've talked about, we're not hitting panic stations. We've been through this. We're not separating internally in the locker room. But there's writing on the wall for me, bro. I think this is we've talked about it probably the last 2 years. This is a do or die year for them, in my opinion. I mean, it's make or break. They got to show that this roster can actually get out of the first/second round and make a push. Because there's the Donovan Mitchell rumors of going, to a bigger market in New York. Now we've got Rudy Gobert popping up that the Mavs are interested. So there's a lot going on there, and I think this is it for the Jazz. I think if they don't make a deep run here, you have to blow it up. You have to start again. And I mean, I know they want to keep Donovan, but I think they might just need a slash AD slash maybe even Zion. Just if it's done, it's done. Move on from him and start rebuilding with some other guys. But they're they're not looking too good.
Bogues, if this was February and March, I would be like, yeah, okay, all right. They have plenty of time to get it right. I always think that by April Fool's Day, you better be playing. Because that's when you got to really be in it with your team and playing well and hitting the stride. And all right, we're coming for you now. This is a playoff time. We're ready. I mean, the way they've been playing, for the last 6 weeks. I mean, it's not a representation. Look, Danny Ainge, if he feels as though it needs to make a move, he'll make moves. He'll break a team apart and build it up again. But he won't if he feels as though there's something going. But this isn't, if everybody wants to stay together and, everybody wants to stay employed, all right, let's go together. This is good. We're going to stay together. We got to show them that this is it. We can make a run at this thing. And this is not how to show it. I mean, they're getting blown out left and right. Yeah, they get injury issues, but folks, who the fuck doesn't have injury issues
exactly.
At this point of the year? Everybody's banged up. But you know what? It's next fucking man up. All this shit about, underdog this and haters that. I fucking hate that word. It's probably the first time I've ever used it in a sentence, and I want to fucking throw up using it. But like everybody wants to say that shit. But like when it's nut cracking time and said, you know what, it's time to fucking show up, and you put up performances like that, it's embarrassing. It's fucking embarrassing. And I just don't see T Bogues. I don't know. I don't study it like that, but I never remember a team that's playing this poorly into the playoffs and then them just like make a run and storm through teams. Maybe the bubble, got to check out Miami and those guys like in the Lakers, how they were playing at the end of the year. But this team has been off for like over a month, almost to, I don't know how they rectify this. And I'll be honest with you, if they do break it up, I don't see them taking all these veterans and things like that. I don't see Danny being like, all right, I'm gonna do this and do that. I see them breaking it up. If Donovan's like 1 foot out, like people say is, I don't know. I have no intel to say that. But like if he's 1 foot out, one foot in, 1 foot out, I don't think Danny's gonna, if they're gonna reshape this team, is gonna reshape it like that. I think they're gonna go young. I think they're gonna go, they're gonna trade those guys for young assets that could really develop and be good, and then just go forward with that. But it's bad. I picked them too. They just have not been playing well, and they've been pretty sorry to watch.
Yeah, and as of today, it's looking like they'll get the Warriors or the Mavericks in the first round. I mean, the Mavs could jump up to 3. I think they could get the Warriors though, Pro. As bad as they're playing, because of the Steph thing, the Warriors just look clunky right now. Wiggins has had a horrible month post All-Star, or a couple of months. Draymond's coming back into shape, but Draymond excels with both those Splash Brothers next to him. His game goes to another level because he can be his natural role of what he does. And Clay's been struggling. He's been up and down with the injuries. So, that's a smoky. They could get through that one and possibly get through them. I bet they'd be cheering for the Warriors Stephless with that rather than the Mavericks. That's what you want. So that could be, but they could fall to 6. They could fall to 6. It's the Nuggets are only half a game behind them. So it will be interesting to watch. But the Jazz, they're in all sorts. So let's just put it all down to Joe Ingles. Should have kept him as a spirit animal in that locker room because I think he's a good soul to have around. But each their own. All right, I've got a few quick fire things to get through because we've got a lot on this run sheet. So these ones we're going to get through quickly because Pro and I can go on 5-minute rants with things. But Michael Malone signs a long-term extension with the Nuggets. Deserve, Pro?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Hard-nosed guy, has done a lot with, all those injuries. No excuses. Guy gets it done. And he could actually coach DeMarcus Cousins, something that 29 other fucking coaches can't do. So give it to him. Yes.
I agree. I was with him in Golden State. I loved him. Really, really smart guy, bright guy, loves the game, gets the best out of his guys. And the Nuggets, in my opinion, severely overachieved this season. No one would have picked them without 2 max guys, borderline All NBA or top 30 players that are out. Porter Jr. probably a little bit outside of that, but Jamal Murray's definitely in there to do as well as they have. But good on Michael Malone. Don't spend it all at once. Wiseman out for the year. I think this hurts their big man depth. We all talk about Steph being out as well. People forget their big man depth is all-time low. And I thought, I've said it 100 times, I thought they'd pick up someone around the buyout market, even DeAndre, maybe if Dwight showed up, whoever. Didn't happen. This then means that small ball lineup will have to be perfect, and it's going to be, instead of 30 minutes of small ball, it's probably going to be closer to 40 minutes. Puts a lot of pressure on Draymond at the 5. They're running to the Denver Nuggets now. All of a sudden, you got to, Draymond's guarding Jokic a lot, taking away his legs a little bit. You got to guard, foul trouble. So I think this causes a little bit of rotation issues in their big man depth, Pro. What are your thoughts?
Well, my thought is that fucking intern that gave Steve Kerr the lineup change when you guys won it like a decade ago. Well, that motherfucker better come up with a second good idea and give him some lineup help because he needs some fucking help. I think this is a perfect time for, fuck it. Let's just go small. We got to do it. And it's tough in the playoffs. You know how this is, Bogues, especially when you go deeper in the playoffs. You need size because people just kill you in that, that switch and just post you and mid-range and do all that. But I think like if Jonathan Kuminga wants to show people that he's really worth his money and worth the high draft and all that stuff, like guys like that, Otto Porter, Belizia has got to do something. Moses Moody got to show a little bit of something. We obviously know the starters and stuff, but I think you got to go small. And Iguodala's got to give you a few minutes. Yes, this hurts him. I'm not a huge Wiseman fan, but I think he's a souped-up Dwayne Dedman. And, I don't think it's a great player, but he could give him a little bit of help. But this is going to hurt. But you know what? They've been dealing with this shit all year with these little nagging injuries. So it'll be interesting. Sorry for that.
And look, no disrespect to Kevin Looney, he's very solid for him. So he's a solid, but not a huge rim presence as far as blocking shots. But just does his job. He's solid, but he needs those stars around him. So I still think they could have done with a big. And I see all your Warriors fans tweeting me saying, "Can I come back?" I haven't played basketball for 2 years, so I'd be about as useful as pro on a basketball court right now. So
actually, Bogues, if they check your stat line. They would have said you haven't played in 3.5 years, but that's just my own opinion.
Oh, wow. Even NBL, that's a bit harsh. I had a good run for the Warriors. I had a few nice games when I went back there.
Hey, you had a good run on the fucking treadmill for about $1.5 million, so that's great stuff.
Sure did. Hey, I'll take it. I got there thinking that, and then both bigs in front of me went down with injury, and I'm like, I was just coming here to be the 13th guy to clap and cheer on the bench and wave a towel and hopefully get a ring. And you want me to play 20 minutes a game now? Holy shit. So that was interesting. But story for another day. Robert Williams, a big out for the Celtics in the playoffs. Pro, I think this is going to hurt them a little bit. He's having a great year, one of the best rim protectors in the league analytically. Been real solid for him, just a great role playing big man. He's kind of grown into a good role. He's out 4 to 6 weeks with a bad knee, had a clean out, I believe. Do you think this hurts the Celtics?
I think it hurts them tremendously. I mean, they've been playing really well. I mean, they've gone from like totally separate team to now really together, playing well, playing on both ends of the floor. Robert Williams gives them that shot blocker, that rim runner, that the guy that just gives them that energy and that extra just oomph, like that athleticism in the front court. Daniel Theis is good, and Grant Williams and Al Horford, but like there's a big difference between those guys and Robert Williams. I think it hurts them tremendously.
Especially defensively, yeah. Defensively is where, and Robert Williams doesn't need the ball. I mean, the pressures, Theis has been playing better for him. Horford's getting older, but being solid. So they'll be okay, but I think they definitely will be welcoming his return. I think 4 to 6 weeks is kind of optimistic too. So we'll see how that goes. Ty Lue made some interesting comments. He said that Embiid and Harden are 1 and 3 in the league in free throw attempts. Take that away, and neither would be in the top 10 in scoring. Fair point. We've talked about this probably the last couple of months, where a friend of mine noted that check the free throw attempts the last couple of months and check the fouls that they've called. For those of you who don't remember, preseason point of emphasis was they're going to stop the BS fouls and guys searching for fouls. That's all come back. The BS fouls have once again increased, especially when you watch those Philadelphia 76ers. But does Ty Lue have a point?
I mean, without question. I mean, right now, my stats are showing, my database is showing that Embiid's averaging 11.7 free throw attempts a game. I mean, that's big time. I mean, you go into the line almost like 12 times a game. Those are huge numbers. And to be able to do that, and then James Harden, I don't know his numbers. I don't have them in front of me, but, obviously he's up there too. Like, I remember that first day you were like, that first game, it goes, it's going to be like 40 free throws. And it was something huge and ridiculous. I don't know about 40, but it was up there. But, I think he definitely has a point. Those guys get to the free throw line. I mean, they're tremendously talented guys scoring the ball, but I think they master the ability to get to the free throw line. And without those free throws, it's a lot harder it's one of the most efficient shots in basketball, obviously. People shoot it around 75%. So, yeah, it's like 1.5 points per possession, as far as like getting to the line. If those, it's hard to grind out, as it's hard to grind out half court, half court makes. If you could just get to the free throw line every other time, it's fucking, you're pretty much guaranteed 20, 25 a night.
Harden's at 9.9, and actually, what is that, a 6-year high in free throw attempts with Philly? He is currently, believe it or not. That's, and they're supposed to have all these point of emphasis on stopping the Harden type fouls. Well, he's at the moment 9.9. His last 5 years, 8.8, 8.5, 7.3, 7.5, 7.3. So doing pretty well. But yeah, Philly are hard to watch in my opinion because of that. But I mean, I'm all for, if it's a foul, it's a foul. But the shenanigans have definitely increased. Yusuf Nurkic a couple of weeks ago, pro, you would have seen this. went up to a fan that was recording him talking shit. Apparently, the fan reportedly said something about his mum and grandma, said his mum is trash and his grandma is a bitch. His grandma recently passed away with COVID, reportedly. Nurkic walked up to the fan, grabbed his phone, picked it up out of his hands and threw it into the stands. Good or bad?
Bogues, I would have been... Nah, I can't even say that. That is a Swedish massage compared to what that kid should have got from that guy. You know what I'm saying? There's a little bit. Yeah. Look, I would have rather the guy said, "You're an asshole, fuck off," da da da. But when you say that about somebody's and you know that fucking kid did his homework. You know, that little fucking cross-eyed motherfucker did his homework and wanted to get under that guy's skin. Like there's different things about saying some guy's fat and overweight. That's fine. That's on him. You start going after family. Fuck that shit. That's some bullshit.
Yeah, I agree. If it's true, they have to fine him obviously because they don't want players starting to think that's okay. But I've been in situations where I've so badly wanted to do that because there's fans out there that will say shit and they have their phone out purposely looking for that reaction and they post it online and think they're heroes and get a bunch of views. But every athlete in the world has wanted to at one point grab someone's phone and just throw that thing. But I think it was warranted. You can't condone it. But if those comments were made, you wouldn't say that to someone in the street. Last one on the quickfire is ejections. There was a Middleton flagrant last night on Bruce Brown on a fast break. It was a questionable one, but there was an even worse one. Austin Rivers versus Lance Stephenson. Austin Rivers kind of Lance Stephenson did the standard street ball move of getting right up and under Austin Rivers 30 feet from the basket, basically had his chin on his chest and Austin Rivers somewhat swung through. Not too aggressively. It was a mild swing through and grazed him, grazed him with his bicep. I think the flab, the fatty part of his tricep, just might have skimmed the hair on his goatee and he got ejected for that. That one, to me, was ridiculous. Maybe it was the intent that they were injected for. The Middleton one, I'm 50-50, Pro. I'm interested to hear your thoughts because I think the fall, if Bruce Brown would have just went up quickly and laid it up, he wouldn't have got hit. But when he gathered on two, slowed down, Middleton was going for the ball at the start, and then I think once he knew he was going to miss, I think the hold on to the arm got Middleton, right? But then at the same time, you're taught if you're going to foul someone on a break, you foul them so they don't get the and one. So it's a tough one. What are your thoughts on the Middleton one first?
Folks, I don't think that there's a right answer on the Middleton one because the guy was just trying to chase something down. Yes, you could have said that Brown shouldn't have slowed down. I don't know if he knew he was coming or not and wanted to show him up, maybe not, but there's nothing you could do about that. You can't tell Brown, well, you got to go full speed. You can't, or you could slow down. You can't tell Middleton to not go after it, especially if he has a chance to get the ball. I don't know, Bogues, to tell you the truth. There's no right answer. Obviously, you don't want to see the kid hurt or anybody get hurt, but yeah, in a perfect world, just get up the floor and lay it in. He's a Boston kid. He played for the AU team that I used to be affiliated with. I love the kid, but what do you expect Middleton to do? Not go after it, especially after you slow down. He's trying to get the ball. What are you going to do? Bogues, what do you think? You're the player in this.
Tough one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was once he missed the ball, chopped him. I think it was the hang on and chop, which you're taught to do. You're not taught to do, but like I said, you're told not to give up and ones. You're told to hold them as much as you can so they can't get the ball to the rim. That's what cost him. But I think you also have to factor in which, the league and people out there say it doesn't matter. Middleton's not that guy, right? He doesn't have form for doing this. Yeah. So I think the benefit of the doubt must go towards, this isn't a guy that does that. So you got to give him the benefit of the doubt. But the Austin Rivers, Lance Stephenson one was absolutely bonkers.
Oh,
I couldn't believe that. I couldn't believe they threw him out for it.
Bogues, I didn't think he even touched him.
He barely touched. That's what I'm saying.
Him. Yeah,
at best, the flab on his tricep touched the hair on Lance's chin. If you're going to start doing that, there's going to be a lot of ejections. I know the NBA is trying to create a safe workspace, make sure guys don't get hurt. But, there also is an onus on Lance Stephenson. The hardest thing is when guys get up under you like that, you've really got nowhere to go because you've got to swing your elbows either above their head or you got to get the ball really low and under them. And, there needs to be some sort of protection for the guy with the ball as well in that situation. It is an interesting strategy by Stephenson that sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. But to get a guy ejected for that the NBA definitely needs to fix that. And there was a lot of people outraged with that. I know Kevin Durant commented on it, a few other guys saying the league needs to fix this. This is ridiculous. I would agree. All right, let's get in depth now. Jimmy Butler altercation was about 2 weeks ago. This was really interesting. Gets into it heavily with head coach Eric Spoelstra, like really, really blatant, fiery, back and forth, hold me back, so much so that they then went on the court. The coach was still going after him. They both had to be held back continuously. The timeout was useless. Then you see Udonis Haslem then saying he was going to kick Jimmy Butler's ass. The OG realised that Jimmy was in the wrong. Jimmy's had some form like this and generally gets the benefit of the doubt because he is a fiery, passionate guy. From what we hear, it's never his fault. It's all about, the competitiveness and the fire, but it's starting to follow him, Pro. These situations are starting to follow him, and they took a downward spiral that last couple of weeks, but I will give them credit. They have rebounded since then. They went in a spiral even before that altercation. They lost some games. They lost some after that, but now they've regrouped. They're still first in the East by half a game. They've got a little win streak, and they've won their last couple of games. But what are your thoughts on all that?
Well, folks, it's never good to have anything like that happen in a huddle or on the sideline during a game, timeout. Coach wants to fight the player. Well, he didn't really want. I mean, he wanted to fight him, but he didn't want to fight him. He knew, just like most NBA players, he knew exactly where the people were that was going to hold him back when he was, coming at him. But like, if you listen to the press conference after or in the coming days after that, he's basically like, that's our culture. It's how we talk to each other in practice and things of that nature. It's just never good to spill on the court like that. Now, I read something, and I don't really like to read things on situations because you don't know how true or not true it is. It said something like, Haslam went up to him and said, you would have never made it in my era. And he goes, well, you're only relevant because of D Wade. I think he said the same thing to Spoelstra in that huddle. And I think that's when it just sort of, it just went nuts. Look, the guy's a competitor, right? But he's got a little bit of defective genes. He wears out his welcome in some of the places that he's at. He's a competitor. You love him. You love to have him on your team. But sometimes he just sort of gets a little bit too much. And I don't know, look, they were struggling. You know how it is when you're a good team and you're struggling and you're losing to teams you shouldn't lose to, and everybody's just frustrated and sick of each other. It's fucking March, April, they're tired of being around each other. They're fucking, and playoffs are coming. You had a really comfortable lead in the East, and now it's like, now you're losing it to Boston, or you're only a half game up, one game up here and there. I think it gets frustrating and things get said. But look, I've always said it on this podcast. I say it in life. I'm never gonna tell somebody how they should feel about something. You say something that crosses a certain line, I don't give a fuck. You lose it. We all have that line that if you cross, we go nuts on, and that's Spoelstra did, and Haslam did. And what are you gonna do? But it's just embarrassing just to sort of carry that out. Then you got Spoelstra throwing a notebook or throwing a clipboard down in this direction. It's like, look, there was nothing that was going to happen. Spoelstra's a fiery guy. I think he's the best coach in the league. It's not even close. But he's a competitor. He's a good dude. But the whole I'm going to fight you thing. Hey, look, that's a Riley thing, the competitiveness and sort of that type of deal. But it's never a good look. But hey, look, like I said, that's how he feels. He wanted to show that he's not going to back down. Spoelstra's not one of those guys who's Mr. Tough Guy trying to fight everybody all the time. So he must have said something that was pretty bad that sort of struck a chord there. He's like, fuck off. I'm not gonna take that shit. So hey, look, as a player, you could say what you want. You own the kingdom sometimes. But sometimes somebody's gonna call you on your shit, and that's what happened. And it's unfortunate. I don't know who's right, who's wrong. I wasn't there in the huddle, but just not a great look.
Yeah, I agree. Especially when it's out in the open. Sometimes they're held for locker rooms, but we'll see how they go. And, if they get to a conference finals or a finals, it'll all be, water under a bridge. Doc Rivers, reportedly, some players are not feeling Doc Rivers, Pro. Now, this is from a pretty good source, according to the Ringer NBA analyst Wosny Lambre, who claims to have sources within the locker room, claims to have actually ran into a player on a New York road trip who made some interesting comments. But basically, some of the players are not feeling Doc Rivers, his rotations, his philosophy, Pro. Do we want to gamble on who your guess is on some? No, this could go either way. This could be role players not playing a lot that are a bit pouty as soon as you hear rotations, or it could be, James just got there. We know he carries that kind of form of leaking stuff like this. So pretty interesting that this rears its ugly head right before the playoffs when they're supposed to be a championship caliber team.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I mean, Doc, look, I have got the utmost respect for the guy. He's a really good coach. I mean, I know the playoff stuff about losing early and things. I mean, obviously that's a written record. It's nothing that you can't really. It's not really a subjective thing. It's sort of like it's black and white. They haven't done great in the playoffs in a long time. Yeah, sometimes look, you know how this stuff goes. Look, we did that study a few months ago. Coaches average 3.5 years in a spot and then they have to move on. Sometimes like your voice, it starts falling on deaf ears. You get people that are just tired of it. Doc's not a guy that's going to back down from anybody. Like, yeah, he'll treat his superstars in certain ways. He'll treat them and make sure they're taken care of, but he calls everybody out. At least when I was around him in Boston. Sometimes people don't want to hear that shit anymore, and that's up to them. I think he's good. To me, I don't know. I think the Lakers are begging for a change in Philly because I think they'll bring him. I said this about a month ago. I think they want to bring him to LA, to be their next coach. So I think they're begging for it. I don't know, man. I think it's tough. It's tough not winning. That they have those guys. They made that trade. Everybody's all in, and they're struggling right now. They're struggling. And hey, Bogues, I like they might be able to get out of the first round with Chicago or Toronto, whoever they're going to face in the first round. But do you really think that they could beat? Well, if Williams comes back for the second round, do you think they can beat a Boston, a Milwaukee, a Miami, a Brooklyn? I don't think so. I don't think so.
Not the way they're playing now. It's generally in the playoffs, the referees tidy up that they're supposed to tidy up that the bullshit foul calling too. So don't be surprised if you see Embiid and Harden shoot less free throws per game in the playoffs than they did in the regular season, which would definitely affect their scoring. And even with that, they're still struggling. They're not guarding. They're not playing well. It just looks helter-skelter at the moment. So just interesting that was reported, a couple of weeks before the playoffs start. You just don't want that kind of stuff. All right, facing potential playoff games in Toronto, this is an interesting one. Celtics and 76ers declined to say whether their teams are fully vaccinated, whether all their players are fully vaccinated. Toronto has a mandate. You cannot get in the country. You cannot get into Canada, period, without it. Bro, this is interesting because this could greatly affect what's going on. And we know that Brooklyn's had this mandate. It's been lifted. I don't think Canada's going to lift it anytime soon. This could severely, impact things. I'm not sure. The worst thing for the NBA would be if the Celtics had 3 or 4 players, or the 76ers had 3 or 4 players that couldn't show up, and their star players or big rotational players. What do they do?
That's a good question, Bogues. That's a good question. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, they obviously going to have to play without them. Now, it's interesting. I wonder, and I don't know the rules on this, but I wonder how many vaccines or booster shots you need to be able to play. Like, is it just the first level? Is it all your vaccines? Because, like Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown didn't make the trip the last game because of some injury management stuff, but they played before. They played like early in the season.
To Toronto.
Yeah. Wait a minute. Yeah, I think they did play at Toronto.
At Toronto.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken. So I might have to recheck that, but I'm almost positive they did play. So because at first I was like, wait a minute, those guys didn't play, and it was sort of like injury management. I know it was off on a back-to-back, but they didn't make the trip. I wonder if they maybe they're the ones, but I think I checked it. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it was a game at Boston, but I do remember those guys playing in the game. Again, I have to check that out. But
yeah, I'm not sure when the mandate came into place. Maybe, in November.
I don't know.
It wasn't in place and they could have flown in, but I don't know who it is. I don't know who the players are, but the NBA's got to be worried. You have 2 potential playoff teams that could maybe have, only 60-70% of their roster if there's a couple of players, right? And let's say one of them happens to be a star. That'll be interesting, not only for the games, but for TV, for whatever, right? We know, the NBA looks at that stuff closely. So I'll just be interested to see what happens, whether they start trying to pressure those guys to get it now or whether they don't, or the players hold their line. That's going to be an interesting thing to watch that can really affect who gets through. It might be, we should hopefully get Toronto should have been fighting for that number one spot from the start, bro.
Yeah, no shit. Yeah.
Every round they play half depleted teams of guys that aren't. Now I'm not sure if Canada's booster or if it's just double. Don't quote me on it, but I believe it's just double. But I know a lot of players have elected to not get the booster, so that's interesting in itself. But something to watch for people out there. Adam Silver says the NBA won't boycott China and kind of alluded to he doesn't know why the NBA is being singled out and picked on to boycott China when everyone else isn't. Well, I'll give you one tip. I think the reason why people bring that up is because the NBA voices a lot more social justice causes than other leagues. I think people are throwing it back that you shouldn't be able to pick and choose social justice causes. I agree with that to an extent. But he also denies Ennis being blacklisted from the NBA. Now, Pro, I agree with Adam Silver. I did agree with Adam Silver. Fully, 100% agreed that I don't think Ennis is being blacklisted. I will go on record and say I think Ennis is still a top 10 roster player. I think he's a pretty good backup big in the league. I think he can do a whole lot worse. I think he's still a top 10 on most rosters. Until I read, Pro, that games came back on TV in China pretty much within a week or so after Ennis was cut. Conspiracy, Pro. Is it a conspiracy or is it just a coincidence?
I don't know, Bogues. I really don't. Like, I do agree with you. He's a good player, right? But let's be honest, though. It's like he calls out every team that he plays on. The last couple of teams. Look, I know Ennis. I know him very well. I worked with him when he was 16 years old when he came over here. I think he's a good kid, tough. He made a good career for himself in the NBA. But he opens a lot of this stuff up for himself, not necessarily just for the social justice stuff in China and calling people, but like when you call out your bosses and you call out your team constantly, like fucking owners and GMs and coaches don't want to deal with that shit, man. Now, I don't think he's getting blackballed. I think it is a little strange that those games came on, but I don't think it's he was the number one guy making the most noise about it, no doubt about it in the NBA. But I just think that, like, I don't know. Bogues, I don't know. He's not being blacklisted, in my opinion. I think if he, I just think people are tired of him the last few years of his career. He made a lot of noise on some things. And just in general, not necessarily the causes that he was with or against, but like mostly just calling his own bosses out. You can't burn that many bridges. And he's not that good of a player to burn that many bridges. Like, hey, look, if he's just silent about it and he wore his shoes or whatever, but like, I think it's like the commentary about it. I'm with Silver too. Like, I don't think he's being blackballed. But the whole China thing, the games being on like right after he got let go is it's very interesting for sure.
It's a strange coincidence. It's a strange coincidence. I don't think it's a conspiracy. Look, I think I wouldn't say he's been blackballed, but I think it could be called, you could label it as blackboard. I think teams just don't want to deal with it. I think teams don't want to have him wearing those free Olga shoes. They don't want him commenting about it. I think China pays a lot of money to the NBA. Billions of dollars were lost with Daryl Morey's posts and even some of Ennis's comments. So I think teams are just like, you know what, like he could help us, but we don't want to deal with off-court shit. And that isn't just solely the China stuff, but he's all the extra attention. His politics obviously don't align with 90% of what NBA players should be saying and talking about politically. So I think that's definitely a factor where teams are probably like, hey, we bring this guy in the locker room. He's kind of contra of what most guys are kind of feeling politically. Will that cause issues? Which I don't think it will. I think it's each to their own. But I think teams just probably are cognizant of that. Now, if he was a top 30 All-NBA player, it'd be a different story. You'd deal with it, right? But I think the fact that he's a rotational player, I think teams are just like, you know what? We can get a guy around about his production that's not going to do that, and we'll take them. So I don't know if it's blacklisting, but it's close. I think teams, when it's benefit of the doubt and you've got player A and player B and they're close, they're always going to go with the other one, even if NS is a little bit better just because of the off-court stuff. So you can't fault a team for that. I don't agree with it completely, but I think there is some merit to what they're saying. I just don't think it's as cut and dry as we believe. But interesting to watch nonetheless. And the timing of the China games coming back on definitely rattled some people. This was a hilarious one. The Lakers social media team, bro, and I texted this to you and Strauss, our good friend Ethan Sherwood Strauss. Shout out to Kenny Beecham on Twitter I think it's at KOT4Q. So he found someone alerted him that the Lakers, bro, this season, you know, when a team loses a game on social media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all NBA teams, you lose a game or win a game, there'll be that final post game. It'll be Lakers 100, Warriors 120, and there'll be a photo, right? Normal. No one thinks anything of it. LeBron James is not being used in a losing graphic once this season, pro. So that there was some theories that maybe he has in his contract that he, you know, doesn't want to be, you know, kind of his photo used in anything to do with a loss, blah, 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 blah. So this guy went back to looking at all the posts from the last year and noticed there's 0 with LeBron James. And actually there's 0 with Russ and AD as well. So they're 3-star players that are not allowed to be used in losing posts on social media, pro. Poor old Malik Monk is the leader with his photo posted on losses. And on the flip side, the guy then decided to, let me look up how many, what's used in the winning posts. And, you know, of course, LeBron, clear leader, with Russ being second. So shout out to that. Just something weird, something unique, but something that's definitely interesting, bro.
Is it more, do you think that LeBron's telling him, look, I don't want anything to do with it? Or do you think it's the PR department sort of tiptoeing around him and being like, you know what, let's not get him fucking, you know, let's not get it, you know, we don't want to get a call from his people or whatever. Like, let's just let's just throw the sacrificial lamb to, you know, to Malik Monk. Like, I don't know. Because it could be either one. To be honest, like, you know,
I don't think it's him saying it. I think it's the latter. I think it's your point. I think it's like they just don't want to deal with the bullshit. And they're just like, but it's so blatantly obvious. Like zero times. That's your friend. He's one of the best players of all time. You know, you use his face for everything else. 0 times on a loss is pretty obvious what's going on.
But do you, like, in my opinion, do you really think he gives a fuck? Do you think he's like looking it up? Like, if it is the PR guy, a little bit afraid of him or his people, like, and look, if you used it every time in like unflattering pictures of, you know, and then like in every loss, you know, somebody might say, hey, what are you doing? But like, if you're using it every, well, they've lost most of their games, so it could be
exactly.
But like, you think like he cares like every 3 or 4 losses you throw him in there, like, you know, getting beat or even, you know, what have you. I don't think he would really care. I don't think he would even pay attention to it, but just goes to show you sometimes. Now, I don't know. It could be other reasons. Who knows? I'm not saying the PR department is afraid of him, but like, if it is that, it's pretty, you know, moronic to sort of deal with it that way. But it's just
a funny one.
NBA.
Yeah, just a funny one. But I mean, you know, that's not a coincidence. Not 0 times. That's not a coincidence to me. It's obviously from somebody somewhere. I don't think it's from LeBron directly, where he's sitting on his phone after a game. Hey man, don't put me on the losing photos. But you know, you never know these days. These people, maybe the Lakers, will just, you know. But
shout out to that guy that had 4 hours of fucking free time to do that. I wish I had 4 hours of fucking free time.
I know. Good on him.
Yeah,
good on him. Yeah. And by the way, LeBron. It's clear as day he's gone for the scoring title, pro. He told us last week his ankle was so bad he doesn't even know how he played. Well, he has to, as of last game, he had to play 3 of the next 6 and now 2 of the next 5 just to be eligible for the scoring champ, the leader. But yeah, I think he can salvage his image for a poor Lakers season with doing this, because it'll be spoken about as the oldest player in NBA history to ever do it. His legacy, it'll help. But he's clearly gunning for the scoring title. I don't think wins and losses matter at this point, bro.
I mean, Bogues, you know, I've been thinking about it, right? Like, for all he's done, like the championships, the points, all the stat accolades, whatever. Like, hey, look, if he wants to gun for it, let him go. Like Kareem, you know, playing with an oxygen mask on at the end of his fucking career. You had like Karl Malone, you know, who played way past his prime with the Lakers.
Yeah, that was bad.
Ewing and Olajuwon, like those guys just, hey, look, this is his last draw. This is the last deal. Like, I don't really mind it all that much. Like, he'll never admit to it, but yeah, he's going for it. But you know what? Let him go for it. Fuck it. This is his time in history. He's trying to put Jordan's, legacy in the rear view. He's trying to be the best player of all time, which is the dumbest thing ever because everyone has a different opinion about who they think it and why. Like, if he's chasing it just for him, his family, just to feel good about it, awesome. If he's doing it to chase a ghost in Jordan, well, that's something that's not going to happen because, look, some people are going to think he's the best. People think that Jordan's the best. People will think Byron Scott's the best. And who gives a fuck? Like, that's what they do. But like, yes, he is definitely chasing it. I don't blame him. Let him chase it. It's the end of his career. Let him do it, whatever. If that's what makes him happy, that's what makes him happy. But
one positive for the Lakers at least. So get something out of the season, but they are horrible to watch. I watched their game yesterday against the Pelicans and a must win for them, and just it honestly looked like a circus at points of that game with the turnovers, and it was just ugly to watch, and they have no sync whatsoever. It's just like the most. That's just the worst style of basketball, worst roster that just doesn't fit together. I mean, AD, he looks like he was sucking wind a little bit his first game back from injury. I don't think he's going to really help him too much these next couple of games. And remember, they have one of the hardest rosters. But you called it, pro. Credit where credit's due. You called this back in January. Someone alerted us to.
Bogues.
You said,
yes.
You can see the Lakers falling out of the 10. And I was like, no way. The league will never let that happen. They need the Lakers in there. Shit, it might happen.
I'm the worst playoff predictor in history as far as when the playoffs start. But before the playoffs, I actually know what I'm talking about. Do never take my advice in the playoffs of who's going to win what. But yeah, like that. I mean, a clock's, even a broken clock's right twice a day, right? But I just look if Davis didn't get hurt, then and LeBron didn't get hurt, they're in, right? They're definitely in. But got a little lucky on it. It's just they're so bad. Like Bogues, like, do you think? And it's impossible because of NBA egos and things. Do you think that there was a chance if they came together in, say, December and said, look, we got to change. Like, if they changed the way they played style-wise or, some people had to get off the ball a little bit more ball movement, was there a chance? And maybe if they didn't have the injuries, is there a chance that this team could have been a 6 seed, a 7 seed, an 8 seed? Or do you think it's just even if they tried to play the right way, they couldn't do it?
Well, I think their big issue, like offense is one thing. Their offense doesn't look great, but defensively, they've just got a bunch of veterans that aren't going to grit and grind defensively. And you need 2 or 3 guys on the floor at all times that are locked in defensively to be okay. But generally, championship caliber teams have everyone locked in. They've got 0 most times. Like literally, you watch them defensively. No one's on a string. No one helps the helper. Just watch Russ box guys out. It's hilarious. Like he literally just turns his head and looks at the basket. Like the amount of guards that run straight by his shoulder and get offensive rebounds when they play rebounding guards. And I'm not just blaming Russ. It's all of them. LeBron does the same thing. They defensively they are horrible. Offense is one thing. Yes, Russ is shooting horribly. LeBron's leading him scoring wise. AD's shooting career low from 3. But look at him defensively, pro. And you look at who else you bringing on? You got Dwight Howard, you got Carmelo Anthony, you got a lot of older guys. Who's that guy that's going to get on? Name me 3 guys on that roster that are going to get on a loose ball. What, Stanley Johnson maybe and Gabriel? That's it. And that's the big part of them. So yes, I believe you're right if they bought in, but I think for them it was like we need guys that are going to grit and grind. They just don't have those guys. All those guys have generally been the man on their team, or top 3 on their team at some point in their career, where they never, but probably bar Trevor Ariza, where they never really had to be a grit and grind guy. So you can't just turn that on when you're 34 years old. And I think that's what's cost them. I think the offense is one thing, but their defense is just horrible, like absolutely horrible. And you see it a lot, like LeBron will come down or someone will come down and miss a shot. They don't run back on defense. They think they got fouled, and it just continuously happening. Like at least get back on defense. Like, that's probably the first step of playing defense, is being 5-on-5, right, bro? So it's painful to watch. I don't like watching them. Watched that game yesterday just because it was an important game for playoff seeding. I watched about probably the last last 1.5 quarters, and they should have won that game comfortably. New Orleans gave them every chance. New Orleans didn't play well, and they lost it. So it will be interesting to see if you're right. If they don't make it, they're currently half a game out with the toughest schedule remaining in the league. So unlucky if they don't make it. All right, 2 more things, and we'll get to the NBL. Hoops Hype polled 52 current and former NBA players, and now that's can go either way. Who knows who they polled, but regarding who is the most influential player of all time. Michael Jordan won in a landslide. So some players prioritize long-term production and impact on the court. Some factored in influence off the court, brand, style of music, being an executive, business interests. But MJ was beyond the landslide, pro. Are you surprised at that?
I'm not surprised at it. I mean, just because of the demeanor of Michael, what he did in his career, what he did post-career, what he made, and what he means to the game. And I think that he's so influential because he doesn't have to talk a lot. He doesn't have to say too much. When he speaks, they're powerful words, and he doesn't try to speak like most players that talk too much. They try to use words. They have no idea what they mean, and they sort of they paint themselves in a corner a lot. Michael was very straightforward. He was very simple with what he had to say, but they meant a lot of things. He didn't get too caught up in politics or things like that. He spoke when he felt as though he needed to, and the way he went about his business and his winning and everything that he did it first class. And yeah, for sure. It would have been interesting, Bogues, what would have happened in his career if there was if he had Twitter and those things. He didn't have to.
Well, he would have had to stay off it with his habits off the floor, pro, that we all know about. He would have had to stay off it.
Influential how, Bogues, though? What was the poll? Powerful?
Well, players could skew it the voters could skew it however they wanted to. They could prioritize straight impact on court and basketball, or they could prioritize influence, or both, right? But I think influence, I think LeBron's trying to get to that level of influence, but he never will, just because of the Jordan brand shoes alone. No one's going to catch that basketball-wise ever, in my opinion. He's an icon forever. That Jumpman logo, that's synonymous with basketball, right? LeBron, I think his impact on the court, you could probably argue now, is greater than Michael's as far as numbers and stats. Like we just said, he's going to lead the league in scoring at the oldest player ever. He's chasing Kareem, obviously. So I think his record wise, he's probably going to beat MJ as far as numbers, straight stats. When you look at points, assists, rebounds, I think LeBron's numbers are much better than MJ's. MJ obviously more rings, but I think when you sum it all up together, I think MJ deserves to win in a landslide just because of that brand and that icon that he built. It's just it's sentimental to me because it was my childhood. Growing up in the 90s, MJ was basketball. Basketball was MJ, and then it was everyone else. Whereas, it's a little bit different with LeBron off the court. I don't think his brand off the court, to me, it's big. Don't get me wrong, he's making hundreds of millions off the court, but I don't think it's the influential brand that MJ is and was still today. The guy's been retired, 20 odd years now, and his Jordan brand it's the GOAT of basketball, right?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's not even close with that stuff. With the career's close, the off the court, the influence as far as, like I said, the simplicity of what Michael did, and how he just sort of, he respected the history of the game. He was very well read, very well thought out when he was going to say something. The one thing that LeBron, I think, is the number one athlete of all time. I don't think anyone has more power in the game using that with, Rich Paul's agency, forcing moves. MJ never had that power. Kobe never had that power. No one, even Magic, maybe a close second, but no one had the power that this guy has to influence and shape an organization. And I'm not necessarily saying that in a good way, bad way, or anything like that, but MJ never did that. Like, and again, I think because of the social media, the lack of, he did have power, but he didn't have it like that, where he wasn't forcing people on and off like places. He wasn't getting people fired. He wasn't getting coaches fired, things like that, where LeBron could, and he has that power, like that influence of, signing free agents and making trades from an organization. That's one thing that I never really read or heard about MJ doing. Now, that's only part of overall influence, right? I think the basketball, they're close. I think as far as the power game, LeBron's done it, but everything else, MJ in a landslide. And I agree with you. He is basketball, and he built the NBA. He took it from Magic and Larry, and he ran with it. And I think no game sevens. I mean, 6 championships. I mean, the guys. It just speaks for itself, and just the professionalism that guy is definitely the best of all time.
And all whilst doing it on roughly 2 to 3 hours sleep a night, which is even more impressive in my opinion, bro. Playing poker or while smoking a cigar. Yep. Amazing. All right, finally, Brittany Griner, pro, could face 5 years in a Russian labor camp. Not jail time, pro. A Russian labor camp. That's a big ouchie. This is coming from a person who, remember, pro, wouldn't stand for the US national anthem and is pretty anti-American with her sentiment. I think a valuable lesson might be learned here, pro.
Yeah, it's an ugly deal, man. That's an ugly deal. Like, we don't know. I mean, we don't know what really happened. Did she have something that they just want to fuck with her? We don't know. But it is pretty, it's a pretty, I don't know, it's a bad deal when an American citizen, whatever, is over there. But it goes to show you, when you're in another country, you just sort of name, rank, and serial number, and you just keep going. You don't even do anything worth chancing. And yeah, that stuff comes back and bites you a little bit with the whole not standing for national anthem and doing the other stuff that she may have done. And yeah, it's unfortunate either way, man. I have a bunch of my boys who joke about it and stuff, and I'm like, you know what? Like, you could say what you want about her. I don't feel right about it happening. Yeah, I don't feel right about that. And you know how they are over there. They could just do whatever they want. So it's a very delicate situation. And I don't know her at all. I haven't heard anything good, bad, or indifferent, but you never want to see anybody go through that. That's a tough one, man.
Yeah, hopefully that can all get sorted out. We don't know the details of it, obviously, but as was always said from the start, you fly to another country, you better read those rules 5 or 6 times before you get there. So, yeah, maybe she'll build some new roads and buildings out there, which is sheesh. Hard labor, just the wording, and hard. Not even labor camp, pro. Hard labor.
That's not good, man.
Yeah, the hard really puts an oomph in the labor. All right, let's get to the NBL real quick. Shout out to my guy Chase Buford, head coach of the Sydney Kings. A nice little clap back for a Perth Wildcats fan, pro. Now, you might not like this one too much, but we're going to go with it anyway. Perth are notorious for having, some cringeworthy heckler-type fans. There's one notorious fan there that will buy a seat right near your bench and heckle someone all game. I was that guy when I played there, which was great. But Chase Buford was asked in the post-game press conference about the guy in the red suit, I believe, heckling him all game. I don't know what he was saying about his slick back, about his suit, whatever. He just simply said the big boy in the red suit needs to jump on a treadmill. He could stand and lose a few pounds. Is that fair game, pro?
That's fair game. That's fair game.
I think it is. And people can sometimes say, oh, you shouldn't fat shame, you shouldn't this. But if you're going to go at someone, whether it's a coach or a player, and you're going to heckle them all game, expect return fire. I like that. I'm a fan of return and fire. And if you're going to, like I said, if you're going to go at people on social media, I get this all the time on social media. I go back at people that go at me, and Bogut, you should take the higher road. You're bigger than that. No, I'm not. I'm an average person like anyone else. If you're going to talk shit to me, and a lot of times it's tongue in cheek, I'll talk shit back. And I think it was just a funny one, pro, that I noted for our guy Chase Buford to have a little quip back at a fan that was into him for 40 straight minutes.
I like it. And as a fellow fat person, I could speak about it because he is one of my people. So I think that I condone it as for president, actually secretary of the fat community. I will say that I second it. I think you're open to, like, look, you want to open up that can of worms, you should be able to get called back. And yeah, you know what? I applaud that. I sanction that move. Okay, there shouldn't be any retaliation. I do like it, and we can move on from it.
We can. I like it. Speaking of Perth, Pro, interesting import situation going on, Pro. So there's a rule in the NBL where an eligible player in the NBL to play in the finals, if your team qualifies, you need to play 7 NBL games. Now, they could be in whatever order. They could be the first 7, the last 7. You need to play, and this basically was put in place to stop teams loading up when they thought, oh, we're making a finals run. Let's just load up our team with 3 games left. So the Perth Wildcats, is it Michael Frazier, I think, the third, having a stinker of a year with the Perth Wildcats, and just not playing well. I guess he's still with the team. This is what's interesting. There was rumors flying that they're going to sign John Brown, who's playing in Russia at the moment. So Michael Frazier would be the odd man out because he's their third import. He'd get cut. Issue being, John Brown is in Australia. He was caught in the airport he was flying in when they still had 7 games left. Got into the country, training with the team, hasn't got a release from his Russian team yet. He's still contracted to his Russian team. They haven't permitted his release. Now the issue is the Perth Wildcats have him still training with them. They still have Michael Frazier there, which has got to be awkward because you got your other import that you're like, hey man, like we love you, train with us, but we're probably going to cut you if this guy can play. They now have 6 games left, Pro, but there are rumblings that there is a rule that extraordinary circumstances they can waive that 7 games. The Perth Wildcats, much like our friends in Adelaide that love to use the excuse in Russia, are blaming Russia. It's Russia's fault. I have an issue with this because you got to do your work early. We went through the same thing with RJ Hunter, and we knew we're gonna get an import in here soon. There's not only getting the import here, there's getting the visas, there's all the COVID shit in Australia. Sometimes they flick a switch and it could take you an extra 2 weeks of quarantine. We knew that 7 games was getting close. So we jumped on our motorbike and we're like, get this done, get him here with 10 games in case there's an injury, conditioning issues. If this exemption happens, it's going to cause some issues, I think. The Russian stuff aside, they pulled it close anyway. They got him here with only a few games left, close to that deadline, Pro. And I know there's a lot of teams out there that will not be too happy if this passes. But the Perth Wildcats are having a crack, and it's going to be interesting to see what the league does, Pro. What are your thoughts on it?
Hey, Bogues, what did they say that the circumstances can be for signing the guy and not playing the 7 games? It doesn't say. So
it says something like extraordinary circumstances or something like that, and there's people saying, well, the Russia war is extraordinary circumstances. It's somewhat is, but you still need to be organised enough to at least not cutting it so close, right? Just to 7 games, and most other teams might have had opportunities for guys that are playing in Russia, and then just cross them out and said, look, too hard basket, it might not work because of the deadlines. So that's more my point.
Yeah, it's tough, because it doesn't look good, right? It looks like you're trying to play the rule. Now, it should be a black and white rule. If you don't play the 7 games, you don't play the 7 games. If they do this circumstance rule, I think in my opinion, should be voted on by every organization in the league and allow it to go, to the board and to the league, or maybe the league office could do it. But I would rather just all the teams get to vote on it, which probably not going to pass if that happens. But you know what? That's one of those things where, like, look, if you get it in on time and you want to play the rule, great, play it with the rule. But if you don't get it in on time, then you need to be, served up on a platter with that and let the, either not get it or let the teams vote on it. Because, what's your circumstance? Come on, the Russian war, like that's more like that guy getting out of his contract, that they should allow him to get out of his contract, but not for an Australian team, signing a guy or not signing a guy because of the Russian war. They should have signed somebody else. If you're a GM, do your fucking job. You should have 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th options to make sure that somebody's going to play 7 games and are available for playoffs. So I don't know. Unless Scott Roth is that GM, I would never say that to Scott Roth. But any other GM, yeah, I would definitely say that.
Yeah, no, it's just interesting because I guess the Russian team's like, you're still contracted to us, dude. We're not.
Yeah.
We want to buy out. We want X, Y, Z. So
No doubt.
if there wasn't the whole Russia-Ukraine conflict, this would not even be thought about. You'd be like, hey, like it's a clear rule. You need to pay the buyout or you're still contracted. And I mean, our understanding was I don't even know how he's training with another team while still on contract. That's the other interesting one. I don't know what the FIBA rules are there. I thought that was not allowed, but I could be wrong. But surely it's a strange deal if you're contracted somewhere else and training with another team because you got competitive advantage, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, when Doncic got drafted by Dallas, he couldn't play in summer league. Couldn't play because his FIBA paperwork didn't get done yet. From Real Madrid, he'd work out with me and shoot on the side and get workouts in, but he wasn't able to do that. So maybe you're allowed to like work out and not practice. I don't know what he was doing or not doing, this guy. But yeah, it is weird. Like to me, I would never allow him on another property, and I would fine the fuck out of the other team if he did that. And or I would fine the player and the team, to be honest. Because contracts. Like, look, we all. But if you sign a deal and that's the stipulation of the deal that you can't be with another team while you're contracted with another team before the buyout, that I'm more like to the letter of the law on that. But hey, fucking shit show, man. Who knows?
It is. We'll see. We'll see how that goes. Anyway, and that'll be a big. If they can get him into the lineup, they're really struggling at the 5 spot, so that'll really help them. But I don't think it should happen. And obviously, I'm biased because I'm an owner of the Sydney Kings and we could potentially face them in the playoffs. So follow the rules, Perth Wildcats. The Sydney Kings 9-game win streak, pro, still continuing on. We're playing your Jack Jumpers today, right when I finish this podcast in about 2 hours. They will battle down there in Tassie. Once again, the Jack Jumpers doing really, really well, battling, grinding out wins, loving the way they're playing. But hopefully we can knock your guys out, pro.
I'll tell you what, I think your guys should be smart enough if they do beat them. Nobody do the yelling of the crowd because I'll tell you what, Scott Roth might rip his clothes off, and he had one of those wrestling onesies, and he put somebody in a figure 4 leg lock like Greg the Hammer Valentine did in the 80s. So I would fucking watch out and pulling that bullshit. Hey, if you win, just fucking shake hands.
Just walk off the car.
No. Sprint off that motherfucker because you never know. Because you got to, as the other dude, as Cleveland found out a couple of weeks ago, he had to share that fucking runway with Scott Roth. And that.
Oh, it's the same tunnel.
Yeah, same tunnel.
One of those genius arenas that decided to build one tunnel out with professional athletes that just battled for 40 minutes walking out of the same tunnel. What could go wrong, pro? Just finally, I copped some shit a couple of weeks ago, pro, when I did our top 4, and it was tough. It was Perth, Illawarra, Melbourne, Sydney, and Southeast Melbourne, and we all know 5 does not fit into a top 4, so I had to make a prediction back then. While Southeast Melbourne were in the top 4, I predicted that they would fall out. I just didn't like what I was seeing from them. I didn't think they were playing as well as they were last season. Some injuries, janky lineups, just didn't like it. So I made that statement on the podcast about a month ago. I had some people reach out to some people with the Kings saying, what's Bogut doing? Why did he, that's so silly. Southeast Melbourne will make it. Like NBL cronies that love Southeast Melbourne was saying that, I'm an idiot, blah, 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 blah. Well, they're falling out, pro. Still a little bit of games left, but they lost to a Cairns team who's not going to make the playoffs. A bad loss last night, a must win for them. They lost to them. They are now 406th below the Jack Jumpers. I don't think they're going to make it. So just something noteworthy for people out there. I got one right. Unfortunately, I know everyone hates to hear that, but I got one right, and I think the top 4 for mine looks like it's pretty much set. Unless something drastic happens, and it's going to be constant moving that top 4 now. You got Melbourne first still, Illawarra's moved up to 2nd, Sydney 3rd, Perth 4th, but every one of those top 4 now can finish first and vice versa. A first place team today could finish 4th, so that's exciting, but unfortunately for the rest of the teams in the league, unlikely that we'll see anyone else jump into that top 4, bro.
Hey, look, anything with rankings of players and teams and this and that, candy bars, someone's going to have a fucking attitude about it. So I hate rankings, man. Because you can't win doing them, because it doesn't matter. That's what you think. Someone asks you your opinion, you give your opinion. But what are you going to do? But that's how people are. They hear rankings and automatically they just they want to get at people's throats for it. Hey, look, that's what you thought. That's what you thought. You know?
Yeah, get on with it, be an adult. We're not kids. Yeah. But just the fact they reached out to someone with the Kings and were having a cry on their shoulder was just, as soon as I heard that, I was like, oh, this is great. This is great. And then it happened. Yeah. Oh, perfect. Yeah. So anyway, we'll watch that space in the NBL, but it's heating up. So it's always good to see. Let's get to our useful or useless. This one could be a fact or fake news, but I put in the useful or useless, pro. I'd love to get your thoughts if you think it is useful or useless. This is sent in from Paul Andrews via Twitter. We appreciate this one. In 2016, the Golden State Warriors were 39-4 with Luke as coach. In 2017, they were 12-0 in the playoffs with Mike Brown as coach. Steve Kerr is just an average coach who happened to be in a great situation. Basically alluding to whenever the assistants took over when Steve Kerr was out or sick or whatever, the record was just as good, if not better. Useful or useless, bro?
I think everybody's sort of a sort of an average coach that's just sort of a victim of their talent. You know, look, it's not true. Steve Kerr's a hell of a coach, but everybody is as victim to their talent. Like if you got great players, you're going to have a great record. I don't care if you have the equipment guy coach the team. You're going to win games with a team like that. But it's still hard. You still got to do things. But like if you got a terrible team, you're not going to do well. I don't care how good of a coach you are. So it's hard to say, man. Like every coach in the league has gotten their brains beat in, when they didn't have a good team, and everybody that had, not everybody, but a lot of people who had great players, they had great records. I don't know, man. Like, look, if Steve Kerr coached, I don't know, if Steve Kerr coached the Orlando Magic, they're gonna be in the top 5? No, fuck no. It depends on your situation. Yes, he's had the luxury of only coaching really good teams until the last couple of years when he had some injury issues. But I don't know, man. I'd say it's fake news. The guy's a good coach. He is a good coach.
Yeah, it's fake news. I think it's a useful stat to discuss numbers, but people need to remember that when Luke Walton was coaching, when Mike Brown was coaching, it's still Steve Kerr's foundation that was set. Right, so it's still his training camp, his philosophy, his offensive flow, his defense. Like it's not like Luke Walton came in and said, "All right, we went 39-4, and I completely changed everything Steve was doing." No, maybe there were some small tweaks with feel and rotations and substitution patterns, and same with Mike Brown. But you have to remember, Steve Kerr laid the foundation of everything that we see when those assistants take over. It's not as simple as that. But one thing I will say, and I agree with you, remember Steve Kerr had a chance to take the Knicks job. Would he still be a head coach today in the NBA? Exactly. No. So there is some merit. Paul Andrews that sent this in. There is some merit in what you're saying. He's in a fantastic. He fell on his feet with his coaching job, but he also took that team from a max second round team to a championship in his first year. So some credit's due there. He changed a lot with the way guys played. Remember, Draymond Green wasn't starting for Mark Jackson. He changed that lineup, brought Daly off the bench, then put Andre back onto the bench. So he made some changes, made an emphasis on less turnovers, looking after the ball more. Steph wins 2 MVPs. So you got to give credit to Steve Kerr for that. But I think, situation plays its part. I think if Steve takes that Knicks job 6-7 years ago, he probably would have been looking right now to get back into the league as a coach again, because he would have been gone within 3 or 4 years, because that roster was just a dumpster. It was a dumpster fire of a roster, of management, of an organization. And Steve would have got somewhat of the blame for it and been out of a coaching job for a while. That's just the reality of the NBA. So I think a bit harsh there. If you think he's just an average coach, I think he's a good coach. Yeah. But yeah, talent wins games. There's been great coaches that have poor rosters that can't do shit with them, and vice versa. There's been average coaches that win championships because they have a stacked roster. So I think it goes both ways. But all right, next one. League leader in plus minus this season, pro. Who do you think that would be?
Oh, wow. That's a good one. We'll go with
Eastern Conference team.
Eastern Conference, Giannis.
Yeah, good guess. It's your guy, Jayson Tatum.
Oh, nice.
594 is his plus minus, which is Very, very impressive. Their run the last 3 months or 2 months now has been fantastic. But that was one that I definitely would not have guessed in a million years, because we've been hard on him at times that he coasts and doesn't play both sides of the ball. But having a fantastic year, and or second half of the year at least, and proof is in the pudding. When he's on the court, they always win the point battle. So that's useful in my opinion, bro.
Bogues, I mean, I've been as harsh as you can be on the Celtics early in the year, and for good reason. And that guy was a big reason for it. And he's stepped his play up probably the last half of the year since probably the trade deadline. He's played great. That is an unbelievable stat that I would never believe if you would have told me. So that's a very interesting sort of stat right there. Stat news, by the way.
That one was StatMuse, yep. I actually went and looked it up because I had that on our run sheet for last week, and then obviously that plus minus would have changed since last week. So I jumped on statmuse.com and just typed it in, and it popped straight up. I just typed in plus minus lead this season, bang, straight away. Pretty awesome website for, like, you can type in the most obscure stats.
It is. Yep.
Like the next one is StatMuse as well, which you'll love. And I did the same thing. I typed this in and it showed up for me straight away. So Jalen Brunson, pro. Mm-hmm. With no Luka Doncic this season, in games with no Luka Doncic, 20.4 points a game, 7.5 assists per game, 49, 35, 80 are his shooting clips, bro. Useful or useless? Useful.
I think it shows his development, over the last few years, being able to play and sort of grind things out, and now could, play without Luka, can play with Luka on the floor, is a huge part of their team. And they're going to have to ante up $20 million a year to keep the kid. And I think he's done great. He's worked his way into a player that I thought would be a Derek Fisher plus, someone who's like a Derek Fisher better, better Derek, because he could score a little bit better, to somebody who's going to get $20 million a year. Could probably be somebody's, second or third best player on their roster. And, is a big reason why they could probably make a big run in the playoffs. I'd say definitely useful. What do you think?
Yeah, useful. He's about to get a bag. I wonder if they, what they're going to do, because he's going to demand. He's close to that max, right, bro?
They're going to have to pay it. They're going to have to pay it both.
Yeah.
You can't replace him. I mean, like, now if they're going to get Rudy, if they're going to get Rudy in a sign and trade, and I don't even know if they can do that or not. I got to check, but if they could get Rudy and sign and trade for him, that's one thing. But if they're not going to make any moves, if they're just going to lose them in free agency, which they won't, they're too sharp to do that. Like, that's a huge loss for them, because if you take him off their roster, they got no chance. I mean, Luka is the guy, no doubt about it. But with like how I love those role players like Powell and Finney-Smith and Kleber and that. But like, they don't have that second source of offense. Dinwiddie does it a little bit. But Brunson has been the guy who's carried it all year to help Luka be that second person to go to consistently and give him that 17, 18, 19 points a game at times. So, yeah, I think it's definitely a useful stat.
Useful, for sure. Get in the bag. Most points per game off the bench this season, pro? Would you happen to know who that is?
Player, I would guess, I don't know. Well, it's probably, Jordan Clarkson, I'm going to guess.
Yeah, he's second. Tyler Hero. 20.8 points a night. Next closest is Clarkson at 16.0. So he's locked in the sixth man of the year. There's no doubt about that. Won't even be close. We should just give it to him right now. But he's having a hell of a year off the bench, bro. It's a useful stat in my opinion.
Folks, I remember I worked with that kid at the Nike camp when he was in high school. He committed to Wisconsin, and then he decommitted and went to Kentucky. Well, they had us break, like the NBA guys that were working camp had him breaking down film. I'm like, look, man, like, I see what you do on the floor, but like, I think you need to be more like JJ Redick. You're doing all this stuff off the dribble. This is why I'm fucking unemployed. This is why I'm unemployed. Like, I'm the anti-progressive coach. Like, I'm not the guy that's telling you should win MVP. I'm the guy that's telling you got to be really good in the corner, straight line drive it, pulling up out of the corner. That's why I'm unemployed. That guy has done an unbelievable job. He works with Drew Hanlon in the summertime. They've done an excellent job together, doing with the isolation game. But he's played great. He was very good as a rookie in the playoffs, in the bubble. He's done really well. This year he's been great. I took Bogdanovich in fantasy over him. I fucked up, but he's, I think it was like in the 4th or 5th round, and he's been consistently very good for them all year.
Yeah, it's real solid, and they're when they're healthy, they got a pretty loaded lineup to have that guy coming off the bench and doing what he's doing, and I think it's genius by the Miami Heat and Spoelstra, because I think just having him not be too accountable defensively, not a great defender, and just have him come off the bench and gun, a la the Ben Gordon role with Chicago. I think every good team that goes deep needs a guy like that, especially in the playoffs. So I like it. All right, next one. You like this is being a development coach's hat on. The Giannis mid-range pro. Since his rookie year, shot at the mid-range at 18.2%. 15-16 shot it at 33.8, 16-17, 33.5, 17-18, 33.7, so pretty close. 18-19, 34.5, 19-20, 38.8, 2021 went down a little bit to 35.7. This season, 41.8% from the mid-range pro. That's better than Luka, Tatum, Clay, Hero, AD, Cat. You name him, he's better than him. Amazing progression considering he shot it at 18.2 for his rookie year. And I think the way he's worked at his game, he's got that little fadeaway now, which just opens up the floor for him so much with everything he's doing. I mean, his improvement has been fun to watch, pro. Useful, useless?
Very useful. Bogues, I think that the guy's the hardest working player in the league. It's not even close. Not even close. Oh, hardest working superstar in the league. Without a doubt. I was very critical of him last year, about not having that in his game. And they did something very smart. When he was a rookie, he had a guy named Josh Oppenheimer that was around the team. He's a development coach. I met him when I was in Chicago. He was a long-time college coach, started working out players for Mark Bartelstein and some other agents and stuff. And he's a really good shooting coach. And they fired him, or they demoted him when he just got when the new coaching staff. I don't know if it was Jason Kidd or who the coach was, but they demoted him, and they he ended up leaving. He went to the minor leagues, did some other work, and then they hired him back. Him and Giannis had a strong relationship, and he's a very good shooting coach. And those guys put in hours and hours and hours of work going to Greece and just spending the time doing it. And that's the thing that you and I talked about a lot about him. He was just missing that. He was just using his athleticism and size and, and just talent to just out-talent people. And he couldn't shoot, couldn't make free throws. And now they get him to a point where he's very good in the mid-range. I mean, he's not just somebody who's going to brick every three that he takes. I think he's got a consistent release. And, whoever changed his shot after his first year was, we talked about it all the time. It was just, it took years off of his career early on because of the fact that he couldn't make threes. And now he's making threes, he's making free throws more consistently, and the mid-range stats show. I mean, it's tremendous. But Josh Oppenheimer should get a lot of credit for that. And I think it's a very useful stat.
Yeah, useful. Great progression. Love to see it. Just continues to get better and better, and they've got a chance for a chip again. So we'll see where that all goes. Fact or fake news, what do you got after a layoff?
Oof. Bogues. All right. So I was watching, forgot the game I was watching, but Richard Jefferson, I think it was maybe Golden State, Phoenix maybe. And Richard Jefferson went on and on about, for decent reason, I guess, on and on about how Booker was getting disrespected, about like MVP talk, top 5, first team, not getting any talk with that. And he deserves to be on the first team. So my first question, Devin Booker is a first team All-NBA. And the second part of the question is he is in the conversation for MVP. Back to fake news.
Oh, well, the MVP thing, I'm on fake news. He's up there, but he's, it's Giannis, Jokic, and Embiid's race, period. Mm-hmm. DeRozan's fallen out. I think it's still Jokic, in my opinion. But I think either of those, I would even go as far to say I'd probably put Embiid in 3 now. It's out of Giannis and Jokic to me. But yeah, I think Booker's having a hell of a year and playing well. Is he first team who falls out? I think maybe he is. I think he probably does get into your first team All NBA, maybe just. But I don't think he's in the MVP race. I don't think he's top 3. I think those 3 guys that I've mentioned have phenomenal years. Their numbers are outrageous. Jokic's numbers are outrageous, right? So I don't think he's being disrespected. I think he's still a top 10 player in the NBA. I think next season potentially could be his jump to an MVP caliber year. But the problem is they have Chris Paul as well, and his usage is just as high, if not higher, than Devin Booker's. So unless they get rid of Chris Paul, I don't think he'll have the amount of usage and touches to warrant, MVP type numbers, unfortunately. So that I think hurts him in a way. But I don't think he's disrespected. I think he's a first team, second team All NBA player. I don't agree. I think fake news that he should be in the MVP race, pro.
Yeah, I think fake news on both accounts. Look, Booker's one of my favorite players in the league. He's very good. What is it with NBA players, like all this disrespect? Not really disrespect. My first question, Bogues, when someone says, well, he deserves to be, I don't know, top 5 of all time or top 5 this or top 5 that. My first question is, who are you going to take off? Okay, that's great. He's put up great numbers this year, all right? He's put up great numbers, and those guys are rolling. He's putting up 27, 5, and 5, right? Okay, that's great. But who are you going to take off? Because,
you're disrespecting someone else.
yeah, exactly. But, who are you going to take off? Okay, so you got Durant. I'm just throwing names out there. You got Jokic. You've got Luka. You've got Giannis. You got Embiid. All right? So
Tatum's got better numbers than him. Tatum's at 27 and
better numbers.
Tatum's at 27, 8 and 3 right now. And just so people can get Devin Booker's numbers, Devin Booker is at 26, 5 and 5. So
yeah, and Steph, obviously Steph and LeBron are out of the conversation this year. They've had off years. But we've got Durant, you got Doncic, we've got Giannis, we've got Jokic, we got Embiid, right? Now the next level of players, right? You've got Tatum. Now Booker's in that, but you've got Tatum. You've got Ja Morant, who's been fucking killing it. And those are probably the only 2 players that I would put in that category. So those 3 guys are battling out for the top 6.
Harden 7, might be in there.
Harden's sort of in there. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. He's in there. Donovan Mitchell is not. Trey Young's played well, but he's not. Bradley Beal's not. Yeah, so those are the only guys that are in there. So those 5 is really hard to say that he's better.
Yeah, who are you taking out? Exactly to your point, though. Who are you taking out of that 5?
Exactly. So I say fake news, but look, it's not like we're saying that he's DeJounte Murray here. We're not saying that he's a good player, but not a great player. We're saying that he's a great player, but you're not taking anybody off that top 5. But I love RJ to death, but it's every NBA player, he's getting disrespected. What the fuck is disrespect? The guy's maybe a second team All NBA player. That's not disrespect. Yes, you're a great team and arguably the best team in the league, but it's hard to be a top 5 NBA player. I don't care how good your team is, and like you said, you got Chris Paul and him sharing it, and it's hard, man. But it's really tough to climb that mountain to get to that top 5. And at some point, maybe he will be, but all those guys are pretty young. I don't see Embiid, Jokic, Giannis, Luka, Durant going anywhere for at least the next 3 years. So he's got to keep on banging his head against the wall and still compete with Ja Morant and Jayson Tatum for that next level. And then you don't know what's going to happen with Dame Lillard next year. I don't know if Harden's going to stay up there. I don't know what Kyrie's going to do. AD's probably going to fall off because of injury. But it's an interesting conversation. But I love the whole he's being disrespected conversation because it's never really true. It's just hard to put a guy up there. It's not easy. It's not a slam dunk just to put him up there.
100%. Yeah, I agree.
All right, Bogues. Right now, Phoenix Suns are hands down the favorite to come out of the West. Not even close. There's not another team that can even mess with them. They are coming out of the West. Fact or fake news?
Fact. Yeah, I think they're coming out of West. My big thing was CP3's injury going into the playoffs. There were reports he might not make it back in time, and that was a concern for me. But now that he's back in the lineup, he's getting his legs back under him in these last couple of games, and he's back to health. Their roster's pretty full strength. Cam Johnson, I believe. What's the deal with Cam Johnson? Is he back soon?
I'm not sure. I haven't. There was something
Didn't play
up
last game. Yeah,
Yeah, there was something up. I'm not sure, but I love Cam Johnson. That team's fun as hell to watch, and they're it would be great to see them in the finals again. I agree with you. I think they're hands down. I think they're hands down the best team. They're deep. They've got superstars you got Paul, Booker, and Ayton, and then you've got great role players in Bridges and Crowder, and then you got Cam Johnson and shit. You even have JaVale McGee giving you something. They're a great team to watch. Campaigns. Campaign's a pain in the ass, but the fucking guy comes hard. You got Landry Shamet running around shooting threes. They're a fun team to watch. Monty Williams does a good job. I think they're hands down. It wouldn't be surprising to me if Dallas or Memphis made it to the conference final and pushed them to 6 or 7. I think one of those two teams are going to surprise in the playoffs. Not that Memphis is a big surprise; they're fucking second. I think they're second in the West, but I think it would be a really good Western Conference final. But I just think they're too good for any of those teams to really mess with them. So I agree. I think it's fact they're going to make it. All right. Last thing, Bogues, we're going to go with our Phoenix Suns run this week. DeAndre Ayton, top 5 center in the NBA. Fact or fake news?
Oh, it's a squeeze in my opinion. I have Jokic at 1, obviously, Embiid 2. I think Towns is above him.
All right, I'll give you 7 names, and then just you got Jokic, no order. Jokic, Embiid, Gobert, Ayton, Bam, Towns, and I'll even throw 2 more in there. I'll throw Vucevic, and I'll throw Jared Allen in there. So is he a top 5 in that list? So you got Jokic and Embiid, whatever. You got 1, 2, whatever. Yeah. You got those guys in there.
I got Cat up there, my 3. I then think Gobert, Bam, and DeAndre Ayton are the 3 for that next 2 spot, in my opinion. But look, I think record-wise and what they're doing, I'd probably knock out Gobert and put him in 6. I would put Ayton in 4 and Bam in 5, and I'd base that on Miami and Phoenix's record. So I would say fact he's just in the top 5, and he continues to get better, and they're winning games. Now, you take him out of that lineup and put him in the Utah Jazz. Does he have the same effect as Rudy there? I don't know. It's hard to say. I think DeAndre's a victim of being around some really good players too. And there's the flip side. If you put DeAndre on a shitty team, are his numbers even higher than they are now? So you can argue it both ways. But I would say he just scrapes into that top 5 as of today.
Yeah, I have the same thing. I sort of have the same ranking. I think Gobert sort of takes a little bit of a hit from what the team's doing. But here's the thing: when you're talking about Utah and what's going to happen, what happens if that was flipped. See, I think Ayton's a very good player, but I don't think he's an elite player at any particular thing. I think, yes, he does play with really good players. He's got a lot of talent as far as running the floor. He's got good footwork. He could block some shots, and he's mobile and active. But there's not one thing that he's like, wow, he's one of the best I've ever seen. You could compare Embiid to Olajuwon with his offense. You could compare Jokic. You can compare him to Sabonis, the older Sabonis, or you could compare him to Bill Walton, or you can compare him to great players like that. Gobert is elite defender. That's what he does. I don't think if you put Cat or Ayton in Utah, they're as good. Yes, they're good scorers and things like that. Don't get me wrong, but I think that Gobert is that perfect defender that doesn't need the ball, even though he wants the ball, but he doesn't want the ball. He doesn't need the ball. He could do it on the defensive side better than any center in the league. So it's an interesting deal. But I think he's a top 5 center. I think he's right there at number 4 or 5. Some people like Bam. Some people like Ayton. Some people like whatever they could. I've heard arguments on both sides for those two, but I think he's in the top 5. I think he's a very good player. Like I said, I don't think he's an elite in anything, but he fits that Phoenix.
He's solid.
Really well.
He's solid. Yeah, he's got really nice touch around the basket, decent decent footwork. He's consistent. He's above average in a lot of different areas, which goes to your point of like he's just consistent across the board, but not elite at anything. But which is exactly what the Suns need. They don't need. They've just got so many good players. They don't need a guy that's elite at something at the center spot.
You know what he reminds me of? Robert Parrish a little bit for those 80s Celtics teams. Like He's an all-star level talent, not a player that's going to like carry you, but he really fits in. He could score 20 on any given night. Yeah, and he's really good. He's probably going to be in the Hall of Fame, like Parrish was. I don't think he'll play as long as Parrish, but he's a good player. But top 5, I agree with you.
Well, are they going to max him out, Pro?
If that owner still has the team by the time that negotiation happens, why not? But I think that they need to. Like, you got to keep everybody intact.
Keep the band together at this point. Even if CP3 aging drops off a little bit, you got to keep that group. That group is going to be a really tough group to beat in the next 5 or 6 years if you can keep them. And they're young. They're young. Like, their core is young. They've got 5 or 6 good elite years at a prime NBA age. You'd be an idiot to try and lowball him or give us a bit of a discount. Just max him out, get it done. Yes, you're going to be over the cap a little bit, but guess what? You're going to be in a conference finals for the next 4 or 5 years. You'll make that back in ticket sales, buddy. So get it done, and we'll see what happens. But that wraps up episode 59. Appreciate everyone joining in again. Sorry about the hiatus. And we will endeavour to get back to you next week with some more at Rogue Bogues on all your social media platforms, at Hoop Consultants for Pro and his basketball analysis, and we will see you all next week, Pro.
But Bogues, before I leave, I was 400 points down in my fantasy league in the first round of the playoffs. I was the number 2 seed, 400 points down because I had all these injuries. I want to keep guys because I didn't know if they were going to come back at the end of the year. I ended up cutting them all, and then I just started getting this guy and that guy and that guy. I ended up winning by like 150. Now I'm in the finals, and I'm probably going to win. 400, Bogues. I was about to jump off a bridge, and now I'm fucking GM of the year.
What's the cash win?
Nada. Because I'm a fucking moron. But no, just one of those things that I did because I was like an ESPN league, and I was like, you know what? Let me just do it. I had a Yahoo league. Then Anthony Davis screwed me. Every player I had got hurt. The one in the ESPN league, I had a bunch of injuries, like John Collins out for the year. A bunch of guys and a bunch of my heavy hitters. So I started getting guys just like off the scrap heap, and just getting guys here and there. And this guy got me 40 points, and this guy got me 40 points. And ended up like this guy must have been pissed. Bogues, I've never been up 400 points, not even close. But being down 400 is like, you got no chance. And I just fucking grinded it out. I got to
made a run, baby. Made a run. Yeah. You always got to bet something, man. There's a bit more. You got to have some skin in the game.
Yeah, well, I don't have any skin in my fucking bank account, so if I did, I probably
bet a cheeseburger or a Buffalo Wild Wing, right up your alley.
Are you fucking serious? That's gold to me, baby. Fuck that shit.
All right, man. See you next week.
Later, Bogues.